Hey everybody, it's Brett, and welcome back to my channel. First of all, I wanted to just send out a big thank you to all of you who responded to my last video when I was talking about book mail that I'd gotten, but also kind of lamenting over the state of the world and in particular the United States right now. I saw all your comments. I appreciated all your comments. If I did not respond back to you, I apologize, and it wasn't anything more than um, feeling a little bit overwhelmed, as I know we all are right now, and probably will continue to be, which is one of the reasons I wanted to make today's video, which is 8 books that are feel-good titles. These are books that I've read, some of them more recently, and in fact, some of them have just come out, and some that are older as well. So stick around. All right, so like I said, when I was seeing people's comments, and all of a sudden I was in the middle of reading 2 different books, and I loved both of them. And so before I did my, or I should say, before I do my wrap up for April, which I would have talked about these books, I wanted to highlight them here because they both kind of fit the bill of kind of feel good books that, I don't know, I just want a book that's going to make me feel good. And that's exactly what it is. And ironically, a lot of these plots deal with death in some way, and yet none of them are morose and maudlin. They're all kind of very life affirming. So I want to get started with the 2 most recent that I've read that have just come out. The first is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. And for those of you who are following along with the Behind the Stack podcast, you'll know that Virginia was just on. She was so delightful, and we had such a great conversation. But this is an epistolatory novel about a older woman who's in her 70s who finds a kind of connection through letters, and the letters that she writes to her family, to her friends. She's a big reader, and she writes to a number of real life authors. Some of them end up writing back to her and the relationship she has with them. And as Virginia describes it, it's about a woman's life who comes really into focus about who she is as we get further into the book, and more letters reveal more about her own life. It is so beautiful. I did some hard, ugly crying when I finished it, but it's really, really, really touching, stunning, sweet, without being twee. Really great book. So that's the first. Right after that, I listened to, and I went out to get it the other day, and honestly, my indie didn't have it the day that it was published, which is The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett. Now, Annie Hartnett wrote this book, Unlikely Animals, a few years ago, which I read and I liked, but this I just absolutely loved. She has been likened at times to John Irving, and I totally understand why, because she writes kind of quirky characters, but they're all very heartfelt and well-intentioned. This is about an older man who's won the lottery, and so he's been kind of living off that money, and he's divorced. His wife has remarried his best friend, and it's not acrimonious. They still all get along. However, they're going away on a trip. He and his ex-wife had 2 daughters. The eldest one ended up tragically dying her senior year of high school. And this was one of the things that kind of ended the marriage. So he has a younger daughter that he has a very kind of tempestuous relationship, and through a series of circumstances ends up getting custody of his half brother's 2 grandchildren, 2 young grandchildren. So he finds out that his one of the first loves of his life, this woman that he was in love with in high school, her husband has died. And so he makes the decision that he's going to take a road trip and go across the country to effectively propose to her and declare his love for her. And so he ends up taking these 2 kids, his estranged daughter, and a tabby, a cat that has kind of worked its way into his life. And what happens? First of all, it's an excellent, excellent audiobook that is narrated by Mark Bramhall, who is fantastic. So if you're an audiobook person, you should definitely check this one out. I will say, backing up 1 second to The Correspondent, and I didn't listen to it on audio, but that also is apparently a great audiobook and has a full cast. But Mark Bramhall narrates this, does an amazing job. It's just really, really wonderful and very sweet and has so many great moments in it. So that's number two. Number three, also a new book. This just came out at the beginning of April. John Kenney's I See You Called in Dead. I listened to this as well on audio, and I really, really liked it. This is about a man who is divorced, his wife has left him, and he's kind of going along his life in his 40s, and he's an obituary writer for a paper. And one evening, in a drunken haze, he writes his own obituary and accidentally publishes it. And what happens? He has a best friend who is in a wheelchair, who is amazing, and their friendship is a large part of the book, as well as one of his coworkers. But the character's name is Bud, and he also is someone that starts to go to funerals, random people's funerals, because he meets this woman at one of them, which felt vaguely reminiscent of Harold and Maude, but only because of that particular thing, and because the character's name was Bud, and Bud Cort played Harold and Harold and Maude. But maybe I'm just overthinking the whole thing. But at any rate, it's a really sweet book about life and living and relationships. So you should check that one out as well. Then, one of my favorite books ever, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite books, just to give you all the feels, is Stephen Rowley's The Guncle. This was a book that came out, I believe, around the pandemic. And for those of you who don't know it, it's about an actor who has kind of retired from Palm Springs. If you can imagine, like a Patrick Dempsey-esque guy who is one of the stars of a very successful network television show about a hospital. He's now retired to Palm Springs. He's gay, and his best friend, who is a woman, she tragically dies. And her husband, in the aftermath, has a really hard time coping and has to go into rehab. And he has two small kids, Grant and Maisie. And he asks Patrick, this actor, if Patrick would take the children for a while he gets his life together. And so Patrick brings these two children to Palm Springs. And what happens? So the setup sounds incredibly sad, and it is in theory, but the way Stephen Rowley writes, it never dips in and becomes two things: never overly sentimental and never overly maudlin or depressing or sad. He is a remarkable writer in that he manages to constantly balance on a tight wire of feeling great emotion with great humor, and he does it so remarkably well. The sequel, it's called The Guncle Abroad, came out a year ago, and in fact, the paperback will be coming out at the end of May. So look for that, and it's a great follow up to the first one. But anyway, The Guncle is so amazing. It is one of these things that it's like my personal mission, and I constantly am trying to find out from Stephen when this thing is going to get made into a television show or a movie, because it's so ripe for it. So anyway, check that one out. The Guncle and The Guncle Abroad by Stephen Rowley. Then a book that so many people fell in love with in what I called the year of the octopus. First, I saw Netflix's My Octopus Teacher, and so flipped out over the octopus that I decided right then and there I would never, ever, ever eat it again. I just couldn't. I mean, somehow I can get my head around having bacon sometimes, even though they're pigs, and I think pigs are amazing, but the octopus was a whole nother level. So I saw that. Then I read Sid Montgomery's The Soul of an Octopus, and again, completely blown away by these incredibly intelligent, magical creatures. And then Remarkable Bright Creatures came out. Remarkably Bright Creatures is by Shelby Van Pelt. It is about a woman who works in a aquarium up in the Pacific Northwest and develops a relationship with this octopus. Now, before you go and write it off, this is not a Disney film. The octopus, she suddenly doesn't hear it talking to her, and it's nothing like that. But they just form a bond. She has her own complicated relationships in her life, and there's a whole separate part of this book that feels like a separate story that eventually will tie into this, and it will all make sense. But I loved this book. I loved this book so much. And again, part of this for me could have been coming out of octopus time, but it is a really, really wonderful, sweet, touching book. Again, I've also heard the narration is amazing with Michael Urie from my show Shrinking, who voices the octopus. So check that out. The next book is from a few years ago and by the author Sarah Winman. It's called Still Life, and it has one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen. Literally looks like a painting. It's just gorgeous. This is set in Tuscany in 1944, and the Allied invasion is happening. The war is going on, and a young soldier comes into this small town where he crosses paths with a art historian who is trying to save all of the art in this village before the Germans come in and ransack and take everything. So it's a tapestry of these people who live in this village and what happens. It is so beautiful. Sarah Winman, first of all, does such an incredible job of creating such a time and place that you literally feel like you're there. You will find yourself so captivated by these characters, so drawn into them, so falling in love with each of them. It is absolutely beautiful, and would be the perfect book also for summer because it feels like summer in a book. So there you go. The next one is by Byron Lane. Now, Byron Lane has an incredible backstory, which is he was an assistant to Carrie Fisher, and they had this kind of incredible relationship. Well, he took that story, per se, and fictionalized it and turned it into a book called A Star is Born about a young man who goes to work for a very famous Hollywood actress who has drug and alcohol addictions. And what happens? It is uproariously funny, first of all. There's no way to read this thing and not think of Carrie Fisher and her mother, Debbie Reynolds, when you're reading it, knowing the backstory, but also you can hear their voices in your head. But it is also so incredibly touching and moving and just so damn winning. And the relationship between these two characters is such perfection. It's just a great, great, great book. And again, so damn funny. The last book came out 15 years ago. And I remember reading this and then feeling like I had to read everything that this guy wrote because it was so good. It was made into a movie a few years ago. It could have been more than a few, but which was not very good. It had the potential to be, but it wasn't. So if you haven't seen the movie, don't see the movie and read the book instead. The book is This Is Where I Leave You by Jonathan Tropper. Jonathan Tropper, it bums me out so bad because I think he's such a phenomenal writer, but he's kind of pulled back from the writing of books and is currently in La La Land creating television. He is the executive producer and creator of the new John Hamm series, Your Friends and Neighbors, which is on Apple TV. And it's really good and has absolute trademarks of Tropper all through it. But he is such a good writer, and I hope he does publish another novel someday. In the meantime, check this one out. It's about a guy who's recently found out his wife was having an affair. It became very public, but at the same time, his father has died. So he goes home to sit Shiva with his family for 7 days and with his highly dysfunctional family and what happens. It's so uproariously funny and again, incredibly moving. And Jonathan Tropper, like Stephen Rowley, is also incredibly adept at creating real, heartfelt, moving situations that will have you choking back tears and in the next instant have you laughing hysterically. He's all of his books are great, but this in particular is my favorite one. So check it out. So there you go. 8 books to feel good and feel good about in these horribly trying times. I hope that you're all holding up. The only thing I can say, and especially even in kind of round out where I started this video, is talk to each other, talk to your friends, talk to your loved ones, check in with the people in your life, and make sure that everyone is doing okay. I don't think it's going to get better before it gets worse. So I think it's critical that we all are there for each other and in any way that you can be. And in the meantime, let's keep reading great stuff. Let's keep talking books. Let's celebrate art. Let's celebrate culture. And let's celebrate all the things that make being human great. So there's my TED Talk. I hope you all are having a good day, week, and I'll see you next week with my April wrap up of books. And I had a really wonderful month, some of which I've already talked to you about. There will be another episode of Behind the Stack next week. However, I will not be posting it on YouTube because it was an audio only version. So if you're following Behind the Stack, you will need to get that from your podcast platform of choice. But as always, thank you for being here. I appreciate all of you, and I will see you all soon.